Alright guys, as per popular request, we will now be looking at how far Jonathan Joestar would get in the Dragon Ball universe. Wait, what the hell? Does anybody else hear some weep shit in the background? Oh ho. So I guess Dio wants to seal the show. That's fine too. Let's see how far you will get in the Dragon Ball universe, prick. So, Dio writes, this was a pretty hard one to place, to be honest. At first glance you might think that Dio would get to the first world tournament if he is lucky, which was honestly my first guess anyway, but as per usual it is not that simple. In order to explain myself properly, let's just first take a look at what Dio can actually do. I think it is important to note here that I will be using max power Dio from his final fight against Jotaro for this video. I will not be using Heaven Ascended Dio from the video games. I try to not use video game exclusive powers or forms for videos like these in order to minimize confusion. Let's take a deep dive into Dio's gaping black hole of abilities. Huh? Somehow I think that one is going to be grossly taken out of context, but anyway, starting off with the obvious one, Dio is a vampire.
Don't come to my house or else I'll suck your dick, blood. I'll suck your blood.
Being a vampire grants Dio several little hacks that can prove to be a massive pain in the ass to deal with. Some of these hacks being the ability to simply ignore gravity. Dio can just randomly decide he wants to walk on the ceiling. Honestly, this ability is not really the most useful in my opinion, but it does allow for some incredibly swaggy entrances, which does grant him some bonus points. Superhuman strength. After becoming a vampire, Dio has shown to be a tad bit stronger than your average Joe, and by a tad bit I mean he can crush a skull whenever he feels like it. Next up we have eye lasers. Dio can shoot little laser beams out of his eyes for some reason. Honestly, this one never really made sense to me, but then again we are talking about JoJo's here, so it not making any sense makes perfect sense. Wow, that's a tongue twister if I have a new one. Dio can create offspring by transforming a living human into a vampire zombie slave thingy that will do his bidding. Each vampire also having the same hacks abilities like ignoring gravity and superhuman strength. Next up we have his ability to fix his injuries. Dio is surprisingly durable, as shown by him being sliced in two and just going LMAO bet and just flex taping himself together. Like, honestly that ability seems to be a tad bit broken, but we'll get into that a bit later. And to top things off, Dio has the ability to make the most dramatic entries I have ever seen. This man can stand on the top of a flight of stairs and make his opponent feel like... Now, as you can see, being a vampire has its perks, but it also has a very glaring little weakness. This man is the whitest bloke around and gets killed if he gets blessed by the light of the sun. He also has a weakness for this breathing martial art called Hamon, but luckily for Dio, Hamon does not exist in Dragon Ball. Aside from being a vampire, Dio has Thunder Power. He is in possession of the stand called Zawardo. This power allows him to stop time for a couple of seconds, but in anime time this translates to a couple of minutes. The difficulty in scaling this ability in Dragon Ball is whether or not Dragon Ball characters lose their abilities in stopped time or not. Allow me to elaborate on that statement. What I mean is the following. Let's say Yamcha clads his body in ki to harden it and increase his defensive potential. If Dio chucks a knife at him, it would just ricochet off. But would the same thing happen in stopped time? If Dio decides to stab Yamcha in stopped time, would the knife just bypass the whole ki barrier thing, or would it not penetrate at all? This is a major factor in deciding how far Dio would get. Dio can stop time all he wants and punch people, but if he can't damage anything late Dragon Ball leading into Dragon Ball Z, he honestly won't get very far at all. For the sake of this video, I will be assuming that Dio can damage enemies to a certain degree in stopped time. However, the stronger his opponent is, the less effective the damage he deals will be. With Dio, I am pretty certain that he would clear the Pilaf saga and the Red Ribbon Army saga pretty easily. There is no one in these sagas that would be able to kill Dio thanks to his vampiric abilities, and he would steamroll them with his time stop. Once we get to the World Tournament saga, we have guys like Roshi and Tien who are the first ones that can damage Dio. Tien and Roshi at this point in time were already capable of ki-based attacks, and you can all whine and moan all you want, but Dio is not immediately getting up after being hit with a Tri-Beam or Kamehameha. Even better, Dio is not immediately getting up after receiving the beatdown Tien gave to Roshi during this World Tournament. I don't believe Dio could live a full power Tri-Beam or full power Kamehameha from one of these two, but I do believe that Dio could kill them by stopping time. One funny scenario I thought of was Tien using his solar flare and Dio just unaliving because it mimics sunlight. But I don't think artificial light from the solar flare would do the trick, because it's not really UV light, it's just very bright. But it was still a fun idea to think about. At this point in the Dragon Ball story, I think the characters would not be strong enough to just have Dio stabbing them or beating them in stop time without any serious consequences. For these reasons, I do think that Dio could get past the 22nd World Tournament saga. But once we get into the Demon King Piccolo saga, I really don't see much of a chance for Dio though. Dio beating guys like Tambourine, Cymbal and Drum is something I can get behind, but he is not beating King Piccolo. Especially not after he has regained his youth from Shenron. Let's take a look at a scenario I think would happen. Say Dio stops time and punches a hole through King Piccolo just like he did with Kakyoin. Time resumes and Piccolo notices he is damaged. While Dio stands there gloating whilst performing the world's longest trash talk monologue, Piccolo heals his wounds and just atomic bombs Dio with a blast attack. Mind you, these attacks from Piccolo would just happen in less than a second because, fun fact, Dragon Ball characters are fast as fuck. If Dio gets caught off guard just once, he is absolute toast. The world is a very strong ability, but it is not omnipotent. Although there has never been an official cooldown period stated for the world, it is not like Dio can just spam it over and over and over again. I think the most times we have seen him use it in succession was when he was trolling Polnareff on those stairs. Simply put, once Dio is in his cooldown, he gets cream pied by King Piccolo and everyone stronger than him. I mean, nice vampire hacks abilities, Dio, but they are not saving you from a city-destroying blast. So if we look at the tier list I made for videos like these, I am going to have to place Dio at the Demon King Piccolo saga. A lot of people are probably going to be mad that Luffy and Naruto are above Dio, but that's just the way things are when putting them all against one another. Both Naruto and Luffy could be Dio because aside from being stronger than your average man and having vampiric powers, Dio is not that impressive compared to some shonen main protagonists. Sure, his stand is powerful, but once he just reaches a cooldown of a few seconds or gets caught off guard, he can lose pretty fast. But then again, videos like these are simply meant to open a fun discussion about placing anime characters from one world into another one. It is pretty much impossible to power skill and compare characters from different anime simply because the laws of the worlds they were written in are just vastly different. The best we can do is try to take into consideration all their abilities and just simply hope for the best. With that being said, if you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to my channel so you won't miss any videos in the future. Thank you all so much for watching, and leave a comment for the character you want to see tackling the Dragon Ball universe next, and I will see you all again in the next video. Thanks for watching.